right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our third Ballot Power series. My name is Mira Devoda. I'm the voter campaign manager here at the ACLU of Delaware. Tonight's webinar is going to talk about immigrants' rights. So if you are attending for CE credit tonight, please drop your name in the chat just to confirm that I'm able to share your information with the National Association of Social Workers. And we'll just get started from there. So I will give our panelists an opportunity to introduce themselves first. Then we will jump into a Q&A. And if you have any questions at any time that you would like the panelists to answer, please either drop them in the chat or in the Q&A box so I can be sure that the panelists have an opportunity at the end of the webinar. So just to begin, Charito, would you mind introducing yourself first?
I am Charito Balbachi Mateico. I have been involved with the last 14 years with the Delaware Hispanic Commission. I am the former vice president of the Delaware Hispanic Commission. Now I am the chair of the Votamos We Vote Coalition and the coordinator of the Delaware Civil Rights Coalition.
Thank you, Charito. Julissa, can you go next, please?
Sure. Hi, Julissa Coriano. I am a clinical social worker and sexuality therapist in private practice. I center my clinical focus around three specific communities: the Latino community, particularly the undocumented community, the LGBT community, specifically the transgender community, and victims of sex trafficking and labor trafficking.
Thank you so much. And Carolyn, go ahead.
Hello, everyone. My name is Carolyn, and I am the bilingual poll worker recruiter with the We Vote Votamos Coalition of ACLU Delaware. And I've also been working with Charito with the Entre Nosotras radio program that is also part of the Votamos Coalition. So I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right, we're going to go ahead and jump right into it. We have a really great lineup of questions, and I'm excited to hear our panelists' insights on these topics. So like I said, if there's anything that's not covered, please drop your questions in the chat or the Q&A at any time. All right, to start us off. So we've seen an incredibly troubling uptick of political attacks on immigrants in recent years. Before we delve into the rest of the questions, I wanted to make space for each of the panelists to share the experiences of yourself or your community amidst this growing tide of anti-immigrant sentiment. So feel free to jump in. I won't wait for anyone to raise their hand or anything.
Well, I have seen firsthand the impact of this pandemic that hit harder all the immigrants that didn't have a place to turn to. Sometimes they lost their jobs, and the only people that will help them were the many other families with whom they live. I knew of a family that whose mother decided, I'm no longer going to work. Why? Because I don't want to get contaminated as this older mother, and I'm going to be here to take care of her 2 children and mine. And that's how they survived. There was no other relief, but that caring people serving, but not the government. So, and we have grown. And so I can imagine this small sample as a ripple effect, because in the last census, we discovered that Americans, we are 18.9 million more than before, and 52% of these totals are Latinos. So imagine how much the people are suffering. So we have gone through very difficult times. Like a woman told me, they gave her, the poultry industry gave her $50. The compensation for having, she had to be in COVID, that she contracted at the poultry industry, $50. However, we are the ones that send so much to contributions to even to our countries of origin. The Bank of Mexico said that 400 millions were brought to Mexico thanks to the hard work of the people. So we are even contributing abroad to keep the the equality in some way with our labor from here. And but we are amazing in the way how, for example, Latinos, they have 2.7 million people working for them in enterprises that are run by Latinos. We contribute tremendously to this country, but we get not really what we need. And I have seen that over and over again.
Thank you, Churito. Julissa or Carolyn, did you want to add into that question?
Sure. So in my private practice, the majority of my clients are undocumented. And within that specific group, really 98% of the undocumented community are victims of crime. And so I hear a lot of trauma. I hear a lot of their experiences of not only how it was in their country, but then coming over here and having to live in this country as undocumented people. And it's painful. It's very painful. It definitely makes you take a look at your privilege way differently when you're hearing these stories, right? And so Delaware, I love Delaware. I always have to start with that. I came here at 15 from Puerto Rico, and I love Delaware. It's a fantastic state. I've been doing advocacy work since I was 15, so 32 years. And so it's a really long time to see changes. There was a time in Delaware where the undocumented community was just a topic you just don't touch. It was too political. It just, no one wanted to touch it. And very fortunate with the persistence of Charito and, you know, amazing people like Maria Matos from the Latin American Community Center made people pay attention, especially our elected officials, of how we, our undocumented community is suffering and needs to have help. And so we've seen tremendous change. And I'm really proud of that. I also, you know, but we still see things that are obvious that we're being excluded from things, and microaggressions of how we're being excluded from things. And so it is a work in progress. And I'm hopeful that, you know, we'll continue to make some changes there as we go on.
Absolutely. Carolyn, did you want to weigh in here?
Sure. Just kind of off of what Julissa and Charito already said, it is a work in progress, and within the Latino community, or honestly any community that has been oppressed and ignored, we always have to come together, and it is our own struggles and our own support that is going to take us even further, which is, I feel like, why we're all here. Within my own experience, growing up in a household that had undocumented immigrants, I was not sure how, like, my sisters were able to even apply to college because you need a social security. And there's so many misconceptions of what it is to be an undocumented immigrant or just an immigrant. Like, people pay their taxes, they do everything that is so-called right, but we're not seeing any of their rights being respected. And I'm just proud to see and excited to see what is to come. I know that there was a certain idea that there's nothing I could do when I was younger, like for my parents or for my sisters, but now here I'm inspired and I'm really excited to see all your faces and to see what's to come.
I appreciate all of the advocacy that each one of you do on behalf of the community as well. I'm just going to move us into number 2 here, which kind of transitioned us to talk about a little bit more of the legislative aspect of this conversation. So the fundamental constitutional protections of due process and equal protection embodied in our Constitution apply to every person, regardless of immigration status. However, 2 of the most vulnerable immigrant populations, undocumented children and undocumented workers, are continuously left at risk. So this is kind of a 2-part question. What policies must we demand of our elected officials in order to ensure that workers and undocumented children are protected? Anyone can jump in.
I'm always going to let the lead. So Charito, you go for that.
Well, there is things that have happened. It's amazing how the power of community came together to address one of those vulnerabilities that you're mentioning, Mira. Because as beautiful as this country is, as beautiful as the people of this country is, the structures are against our people. And this is us created out of nothing. Well, not really nothing. I will say what that nothing is, but it is a social construction, just like we created with slavery because, you know, we needed to have cheap labor for the cotton plantations. Now, we needed dependable people in the poultry industry, in the fields, agro industry, et cetera, et cetera. So in 1965, here we create this division. It didn't exist before. We need to just remember this. It did not exist, the division between so-called illegal and legal people. It was created because they needed dependable workers, because usually the people cross the border back and forth, back and forth. And yes, there was atrocities happening, like they will at that time put DDT and then because they didn't want the, you know, the dirtiness of them to come to America. There will be a pool of DDT where they needed to jump and get out. Now we know what DDT did to their bodies in nature. But however, there was this in some way of freedom to go back and forth. But they also realized we don't have dependable labor. And this law, 1965, was created for that purpose. So the most vulnerable are in this country. Well, there is many sectors, but the ones that we can talk about in this is the immigrant communities and the undocumented children. So we need that all the rights being, that they will receive all the rights they have as human beings. And our children need the protection of adults to be taken for wellness, to be taken for prevention medicine. And that's what HB 317 wants to do. And it was not successful, but it was not defeated, and we are gonna have to push that. And we need to now, in this election cycle, we need to ask the right questions to the people that want our vote. Are you gonna vote for 317, HB 317, given coverage, health coverage to our children? Are you gonna do that? And then we decide, because before we needed to ask, are you gonna give us the driving privilege card? And that was the litmus test. So now we have a litmus test. But of course, there is other platform. I'm so glad that the ACLU, one of those platforms is children need to have coverage. All the children need to be covered because we are the protectors, the adults, and they should not suffer in their lives for the good choices that parents did in trying to give them a better life.
Absolutely, Charito. Thank you for referencing HB 317. I've dropped the bill in the chat for anyone that would like to read further into that legislation. Julissa, I see that you unmuted as well.
I did. I'm so glad that Charito, I have it in my notes, so she beat me to it, but I'm so glad Charito brought up that la tarjeta de conducir. She was instrumental, absolutely the forefront with the Delaware Hispanic Commission backing her up. But she was absolutely instrumental in making sure and bringing to the forefront that undocumented people need the driving privilege card. And everyone rallied together and it got passed through and we haven't had any issues. So I'm extremely proud that was passed through. One, you know, and absolutely HB 317 is so important. That is the next step. My work really looks at reproductive justice for undocumented women, how important that is, because they don't have medical insurance and they need reproductive care and they need, you know, contraceptive care. And so Delaware is a really great state in the fact that they have programs that do provide free birth control to people, whether regardless of their status and their insurance in the state. But it's just getting the message out there. And so I find one of the most very vulnerable communities that we have or groups that we have are undocumented women in the state that we need to address.
Thank you, thank you. We all did it. And you know, this is the key. This is the lesson, Julissa, to which you were referring to. We did it as a coalition. And who created this coalition? An African-American leader. She said, Charito, you are not going anywhere unless we get together around you. Around you mean at that time the Delaware Hispanic Commission, with which I'm not part of it, but that was really the way to go. And that's what we have now. The Votamos We Vote coalition, and the ACLU Delaware is one of the main that really push us in the right direction with all the things that we have been able to accomplish, such as the website, but I'm sure you're going to speak later about that, Mira, in the radio, that Carolyn is, you know, a driving force as well. Every week we get her input in the script to keep going and reach out to Latinos.
Absolutely. Carolyn, did you want to weigh in here? And just because I did say the question a while ago, I'll repeat it real quick too. So what policies must we demand of elected officials in order to ensure undocumented workers and children are protected?
Well, I would just want to touch base a little bit more about the Cover All Children Act, because just as Julissa said, everyone, regardless of documentation status, deserves and needs medical care, health care. And I think something that is often ignored, especially in the Latino community, is mental health. And this is something that I have been trying to push or investigate a bit more, just because it leads and ties to so much of your own physical health. And we need to start a conversation. And I know the conversation has been started, but I think we're just very much focused on how getting our basic needs funded, but I just don't know if there's a way that we can start talking more about what our mental needs. And I mean, medical care would cover every mental health, you know, like if you see a therapist, or if you just want to get checked out at first. I also wanted to say, Charito, I did not know that you were like a huge force on the driving privilege card. And that was one of the biggest insecurities I ever had, was my mother, every time she got pulled over, she'd have to get a ticket. And it was just because she didn't have a driver's license. And it was like, well, I can't get a driver's license. And they're like, okay, well, here's $100 ticket. And it's like, just more and more compiling on top of something that can't be helped. But yeah, I think that was a huge, huge win for the immigrant community.
Thank you. I'm glad that your mother was one of the beneficiaries. Actually, there's supposed to be 35,000 beneficiaries, but the Trump times, it really killed the hopes of this to be a process that they can trust. And there is some issues that we need to iron out about this, because nothing is as, you know, as perfect. It has to be better and better. And I think part also I know you were going to talk about that later, Mira, but it's the opportunity, I think, to connect.
Please go ahead, add it in.
The fact that there is certain things that the DMV shares, and they told us, yes, we share. So we need to go down and deep and navigate what was exactly what they are saying with this, in what circumstances, because to open it up to everyone, I mean, how many so-called, no, I'm not going to say the word, how many people that have committed crimes are Latinos? A minuscule percentage. And to open up the whole data for this type of thing is I think that makes us very vulnerable. And we already have this tremendous psychological thing with Mr. Trump that really drill into our consciousness and create fear and stress. So that's what is very important, that we also ask leaders, are you going to make sure that this mechanism of the driving privilege card is going to completely, fully protect it? Even though we put a lot of things for that effect, you know, we couldn't have the whole universe of what things could happen. And so I think that because the DMV have acknowledged they do share, we want to know exactly what that means. And they want, because that's what they told me, They want to really perfect it, evolve it to something that will create more security. So, well, let's take their word for it in work. And that's what I'm happy that ACLU have included that one as one of our platforms on immigration in Delaware.
Absolutely. And actually that's a perfect segue to give us some more context on what Chorito was just describing. The need for, and this kind of brings us into the next topic as well, so I'll just read the background here. While advances in technologies have brought us many advantages and conveniences, the growing databases of personal information puts already vulnerable communities like the undocumented community at an increased risk of civil liberties violations. This is particularly true for undocumented individuals who are disproportionately impacted by data sharing, as Chorito just described, between the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, also known as ICE, and state agencies like the Department of Motor Vehicles. So Chorito gave us a really good background on the context of that issue. And my next question would be, how does the reality of data sharing impacted an undocumented individual's ability to care for themselves and their families, with fear that, if they do apply for any kind of information within the DMV, that it might be passed on to ICE as well?
Well, that will be the end of their lives, period. Not the lives that they know it. It will mean deportation, and it will mean incarceration. There is a whole industry that have grown up besides the prison that carries American prisoners. It carries all the undocumented people. Big bags, they are doing with our bodies, with our lives. And it is a civil crime. It's not a crime to cross the border. But since the times of 9/11 in Bush, happy to give all the money for the strengthening of the border patrol, the country have never ever been seen the same. Militarization. And there is people that, when I read articles about how these things happen, even people that have their children that they love and care and are kissing them goodbye, they are the ones that did not care for Latinos and children to be taken from their mothers and parents and fathers' arms. So I don't know how this double dipping is in their lives, that they could care so much for their own, but care not the resemble of those human beings are equal to you. And these children, they want love, presence as much as yours. So it's just a fiasco. And it's the same mentality that took the children from African Americans, mothers and fathers, when the Africans enslaved people in the slavery, is the same mentality that took children from their homes of Native Americans. And I'm talking about two different periods in the history of America. It's just too long that we are stuck in to believe the wrong thing and don't see ourselves as people that would have joined the lines of the abolitionists. Well, ACLU is allowing us to do that because they are that type of people. We need to support ACLU and Delaware and votamos we vote, because we are trying to unstuck ourselves from the beliefs that things are the way they are, because they are not. We can make it different.
Lisa, I see that you have a thought on the tip of your tongue too.
Yeah, so I just wanted to share a little bit on my thoughts on data sharing. I actually saw it very much so during the beginning of COVID. And Delaware did such a great job of just like jumping on it and creating these systems that you can go and get tested, you can go and do this. And then when the vaccine came out, but what they didn't really account for was looking at the whole picture from everyone's perspective, right? Particularly undocumented. And so a lot of undocumented people were not going to the website to sign up, to register for COVID testing. And it was a struggle. Chorito knows. And it was just like, she did a phenomenal job of going on the radio, visiting people, trying to get the information out there. about just simply going onto the website to register to get COVID tested. And it was a struggle. It was an absolute struggle because they were so concerned about their data, their information being shared. And who has this information? What are they going to do with it? What kind of database does this go to? The same thing when also with COVID and pandemic, when kids had to switch totally online and the parents had to get an email address to be connected to the school system. That was just a panic. And so something that we think, an email address is not a big deal, but it kind of is. You know, I'm not a conspiracy theory person at all, but I am a very private person. I'm the first one to say that I have a Google Voice number to use on everything from my Walgreens card to my supermarket card that you punch in to get the reward. I don't use my personal information if I don't have to. So I can understand, and I don't have the threat of being deported or someone like ICE coming to my home. And so I can definitely understand how that's a real fear for people. So that's how I saw the fear of data sharing most prevalent in Delaware amongst our community.
Thank you for those thoughts, Julissa. And it's true, you know, we talked about this question in terms of the DMV, but things like COVID and vaccinations pose threats that are not always considered when we have these public programs. Carolyn, did you want to weigh in here as well?
Yeah, so I think that there's, you know, just a general fear amongst our community, and I don't say it makes sense, but they already don't trust the government, and they don't trust these institutions. So if we put it on a new age database scale, it's like even more intense, and that leads to people not wanting to give information, like how we're recruiting poll workers and people to vote. Like, people don't want to give their information, and they're afraid to get involved because they think there will be a repercussion, and there probably might be a repercussion. Who knows of where this is going to? And this overall fear and mistrust causes anxiety, and this anxiety is so deep rooted, and it goes generations and generations, and that inhibits people from being able to live their true selves and live the lives that they wanted to give to their children, which is why they risk so much to cross the border. So it's just like on so many different scales, there's fear and anxiety, and it affects them in all different ways. And you know, I saw that my mom for the longest time did not want to get a debit card. She refused. And I was like, no, but you can't do cash anymore. And she was like, I'm not giving them my information. But finally, like, you know, with new age, she's come around. But there's just an initial hesitance to do anything and give your information out. And
well, Carolyn, that brought me what you were thinking, these words, trauma. And Julissa could speak more because she actually deals in this, is a leading person in mental health that you were referring to, Carolyn. I don't know what Latinos will do without Julissa being there for them to speak to them in the most intimate way for their more intimate issues in their own languages. It makes a big difference. And there later, we should talk about that also being part of our platform, because it's the law, but we can talk in a little moment. That what I want to say at this point is that at the same time that we are so entrenched in this fear factor that produce trauma, at the same time there is wonderful signs that when the information comes in a way that reach out to you from your heart, that is familiar to you, and people that you know have been working for you. I mean, I am very, very lucky that people give me their phone number, and I include them in my Signal group. And I invite everyone that is to find charity telephone numbers all over the place in the internet, and send me so you can be included in my list. I think we connect very well with trusted sources in text, and we also connect with trusted sources in Facebook, like Laura Leo's 70,000 people, Latinos trusting on her because she has shown integrity, and she is a mother, and she is a beautiful daughter, and she's Ria, and she is an immigrant. So when they trust people like Laura Leo's in Julissa, then we're blessed and we can help the community. And now, that's what I love, Entre Nosotros Radio, because this segment is allowing us to reach to the homes while people are, folding the clothes of the children, making food, when people are just fixing the house or doing something else. We are talking about our lives. We are allowing immigrants to tell the marvelous stories of their lives. And I think that builds trust.
Absolutely. Thank you. And Charito, you keep giving me the perfect segues into the next conversation. So thank you for that. As Charito was explaining, sources like Entre Nosotros or other resources that allow for communities to get information and to hear it in their own languages too, like our Votamos website that is also all in Spanish, and Vote Delaware, which can be translated into Spanish as well. It's really important. And so bringing that into the conversation now, we're going to talk a little bit about the importance of having Spanish language employees and resources available to the population here in Delaware. So just for a little bit of background, in recent years, Delaware has seen a dramatic increase in the percentage of the population that identifies as either Hispanic and or Latino. The 2020 U.S. Census confirmed that 104,290 Delaware residents, or simpler, 1 in every 10 Delawareans, identify themselves as such. However, the true number is thought to be much higher, as many immigrants distrust government officials, as Carolyn pointed out to us earlier, and fear that sharing personal data causes immigrants to be undercounted in the U.S. Census. So, with that background, what initiatives must the state of Delaware take to ensure that Spanish-speaking Delawareans are able to access all resources needed to prosper in this state and country? That was a long one, so I'll repeat any part of that.
Well, but what you are saying basically can be said in one single answer. Apply the law. There is a federal law of the limited English proficiency. And limited English proficiency mandates that if you, an agency, are receiving money from the federal government, you better provide for your population, if there is limited English proficiency among them, the language they need. And Spanish happens to be one of the most spoken, but there is others, and they have to take care of those too. We don't want to monopolize. We want diversity. We love diversity. Even among ourselves, there is people that only speak ma'am, sometimes even Quichua from Latin America, South America. So we need to think about those differences, and it cannot be. So this is one thing: apply the law, provide this, but don't think that you can get away with talk to me through this person that is in the phone. No, it cannot be that way. It's not culturally appropriate. This shows nothing of cultural competency. We need, when I know why Julissa is so successful, you can hardly get here because everybody wants to be with him. It's because of the language. It's because they don't have to make up, just focus on what they are dealing in their hearts and minds, because it fluids better in the other person understanding. So that is something that is very important. And we need to just create a platform and ask, again, the legislators, are you for it? What are you going to do so we can have the application of this federal law? It's very important that we do it. It's very important that we do it in an appropriate way, because Spanish people, I mean, those that speak Spanish, Portuguese, and other language, they are integral part of the community. So the legislators not only have to recognize the value of diversity within Delaware, they also have to guarantee that all the residents of Delaware have the same opportunity to prosper. And the way to do it is speaking their own language.
Melissa, would you like to weigh in here as well?
Sure. I was looking at those stats while Charito was talking. It has definitely have to be one more than 1 in 10. I know sometimes we're not even given the opportunity to choose on forms and things that we are Latinos, we are Hispanic, we are Indigenous. And so I remember going down to Dover to get my fingerprints done for a board that I was sitting on, and I had to submit my prints. And there's a big sign that says, you know, Hispanics, you know, white is the only category, black was the only category. It was only, and I'm looking at the form and I'm like, I'm not white. And I said to the young lady, I said, I'm not white. I'm Indigenous. I am, you know, Latina. I'm Hispanic, however you want to put it, but I'm not white. She said, well, that's the only option we have. And so you think of all of the undocumented people who are going through the immigration process have to get their fingerprints done. And so when they're getting their fingerprints done, they're checking off that they're white. That's a huge detriment, right? Because then it turns around and it's like, oh, well, we don't need these services because we're not really seeing that Latinos make up that much of the community to provide these services. But then you're not allowing us the opportunity and the space to mark off who we really are. And so that's a huge problem. So I was just looking at that stat. But no, I agree completely with Charito in the sense of how important our language is, right? And so I love speaking Spanish. I speak Spanish 95% of my day, depending on when you catch me. My English may be absolute. You caught me in a good day because I've been speaking English all day today. But I love my language. I love that I'm able to communicate with my people in my language. I can go to the store, and if I see someone struggling who doesn't know English, that I can step in, and that's happened so many times. One of the issues that I'm seeing as a clinical social worker is just not enough Spanish-speaking service providers, right? And so we have an amazing group down at Del State of DACA recipients who are Latinos, right? And so the majority of them are social workers. And so what I'm seeing is a lot of them are contacting me saying, we're not passing the NSAW exam. The National Association of Social Workers just submitted a report breaking out the failure rate of the exam by racial composition. And Latinos were one of the lowest. Black men and Latinos were one of the lowest. And so if you're taking this exam 4 or 5 times, you've already, spent $3,000 hours total with your master's degree, clinical experience, and also post-master's degree, and you can't pass the exam so you can then get a job to go help at the hospital or help at the clinics or do something, that's a really huge problem. And so part of my advocacy is then reaching out now to the Delaware NSAW board and being like, what are we going to do about this? We need Spanish-speaking people in our hospitals, in our schools. What can we do? We need Haitian Creole speakers in our hospitals and our schools. What can we do? We can't allow a language barrier in this day and age to really prevent people from receiving services.
Absolutely. Thank you for those thoughts, both of you. Carolyn, go ahead, add your comment in there.
Yeah, just something quick is I think this all reflects, and it's all cyclical again, just like the fundamentals of being able to have languages or options of language within early childhood care, or just like within primary schools, just like getting people young, even if they aren't Latino, even though on a cultural base, speaking to a Latino to another Latino is more comfortable, but just getting people to be more aware, I think would be key. But again, it's cyclical. So how can you have language educators if you don't have people who are able to speak on it? I don't know. I've like running through my head right now, but education, yes.
Always, always underlying. We have one more question, and then we had one question in the chat that I would like to address as well. And Carolyn, you gave me the segue then. This has worked very smoothly. Our next question is about the Daca program. So as of March 2020, Delaware was home to 1,310 active Daca recipients. Thanks to DACA, these Delawareans have been able to live, work, go to school, and become an important part of Delaware communities. Now, just for the sake of all of our viewers here, if our first panelist to speak also wants to give a little overview of what the DACA program is, I think that would be helpful. But on top of that little overview, what policies do elected officials need to push to build a more sustainable DACA framework that allows for DACA individuals to take advantage of every opportunity presented to any other Delawarean, regardless of legal status?
Well, very, very simple. There is a lot of details for how you become a recipient of DACA. It has to be in the right year and the right day, not before or after. A line is set, and then the requirements. These are the brilliant people. These are the most law-abiding people, because all the requirements they have to fulfill in order to become recipients of this program that Obama created when he couldn't do anything. And he didn't do it when he could do it, because he had the two houses, the House and the Senate in his hand. But he decided, and I'm not going to make a political remark here, but he failed. And he created this constellation that Mr. Trump used it like in the most disgusting and vulgar way, creating more traumatization for our DACA recipients, their parents, and their children. So what we need to do now, we need to look for these opportunities that they have. They need to be expanded and be broader. So, for example, they have to have access to the matricula, to the tuition that other students have, and they have to have access to financial help. Many of the students that are in DACA received a scholarship to study in Delaware State University, and that was a blessing. But there should be more. And well, there has to be in the legislature of Delaware, the licensure, the benefits of having a occupational license and professional license to be extended to those that have worked hard in a school, done everything that one American is expected to do. They should not be, without that possibility. What are these 1,300 amazing DACA students gonna do with their little paper that said they are so qualified if they cannot stay here, produce here, get back to this country? This is what they want. So I think that is very important. So electing people, but we really need to go beyond this identity politics, because that's a history that I've seen. I used to live in Sussex County, and the senator from Sussex County, maybe the first Latino in the legislature, the second one, maybe the first one in Sussex County. Guess what? Latino as he was, the only thing that he was good at is to say it in Spanish, how are you? But he voted no and no and no for this opportunity when it was proposed as a law that every resident, that means an undocumented child that have been a resident and have gone to school, be paying the same tuition that their peers, regardless of their citizenship or no citizenship, regardless of the immigration, as long as they have been residents, mean living here in Delaware, paying taxes because their parents pay taxes. And for this person, this Latino, so-called Latino senator, not to support that legislation, we cannot just vote for Latinos. We need to vote for Latinos that mean it, Latinos that have voted consequently for things that benefit Latinos. And we need to ask the question, what will you do now? What will you do now for the DACA students? What are your proposals to protect them, to keep them here, to allow them to join the labor force in a way they deserve, not being exploited with the capacity they have, because they are the model Americans. If you want to dream in one, those are the DACA recipients.
Charito, thank you so much for that answer. Just actually for the sake of time, I want to make sure that our audience member has this question answered here. So, Lisa, I think this actually might be something that is most tailored to your work, but we had a question from the audience about what the procedure would be for documented and undocumented immigrants to access free birth control.
Oh, sure. So is that me feedbacking? I'm sorry. I connect everyone with Planned Parenthood as much as possible. Planned Parenthood is absolutely amazing. They have 3 sites, Wilmington, Newark, and they just opened up a 3rd one in Sussex, which is really there to help the community, especially the Latino community down in Lower Delaware. And so I connect them to Planned Parenthood, and Planned Parenthood, they have funding, they have grants, they have information that can get them connected to free birth control in Delaware. Delaware also has a program. It's called Delaware One. I have the card right here. Delaware One. And it's a mail order condom program. And they not only send you condoms for free, they send dental dams and they send lube. But you can just sign up something really quick online, and every single month you're able to receive condoms and dental dams free through the state of Delaware. As far as IUD, I think it's called DCAN is the program. It used to be Upstream that was started by Jack Markell years and years ago, and then that program kind of went over, and then DCAN took over. And DCAN is the program that will provide you with contraceptives in terms of birth control pills, in terms of condoms, IUDs, anything that you need. But anyone who else needs information, you can definitely reach out to me and I can provide you everything that you need.
Thank you for
that
question.
Answer.
Yeah, excellent question. I think I found the correct Delaware link and dropped it in the chat, Julissa, but if that is not the correct one, please let me know or shoot it to me after too, and I can include it in a follow-up email to all of our viewers. So thank you, I appreciate that. Carolyn, I actually wanted to, go ahead, Charito, you want to weigh in?
I do want to mention
Yes, please.
Who is Lyle Distra. He is a 40-year retired clergy from the Presbyterian Church who continue with her heart, with the desire of service, and he is in the steering committee of the Poor People campaign. So he is committed, and he is also in the Immigrant Justice from the same Presbyterian Church of Newcastle. And we need those type of allies like him and his beautiful wife, Terry Disra. They have been supporting any little thing or big thing that I did for ages. And so I bring this up because I want all my Latinos that are listening to me to let them know we're not alone. There is amazing people in the ground, helping those in the ground and supporting and connecting, because those in the grassroots, they has to have this connection with the middle ground that are the NGOs, the churches, and all of that, to be able to reach out to this and pull them down and say, come down here and do what we need. But these forces in the middle, like Lila and his beautiful wife Terry, are some of the champions. And well, I should tell, there is many. Be happy that there is such a thing in Delaware. There is people that don't live injustice of Latinos alone. They are always supporting what we do.
That was an incredibly important point to make, Charito, too. We have so many incredible coalition partners like Lyle throughout the state that are really helping to push our work forward, and it's incredibly appreciated. Carolyn, before we wrapped up here, I wanted to give you a minute or two to tell us about your poll worker recruitment work and what some of the viewers today could do to help you out with that process.
Yes, hello. So as Mira already said, can you guys hear me? Okay, cool. As Mira already said, I am the bilingual poll worker recruiter for the Votamos Coalition, and I am seeking poll workers who are eligible So they have to be US citizens because they have to be registered to vote. And if they need to be registered to vote, we can always help with that. But they must also be bilingual in English and Spanish. And they have to attend a 3.5-hour training prior to the elections and then fulfill their entire shift the day of elections. So the primaries are September 13th, and we're also recruiting for the general elections, which are, is it November 8th? Am I right on that one? Yes. Okay. Yes, November 8th. And, you know, so far I only have 4 of them, 2 in Newcastle and 2 in Kent, I'm pretty sure. And I'm seeking poll workers, of course, in Sussex, but like throughout anywhere. And if anyone has any questions, oh wait, also there's a stipend. So they can receive from $190 to $235. And if the poll worker is recruited by an organization, or if this poll worker wants to choose an organization, there's going to be a $200 stipend they can give to that organization of their choice. I don't know if I missed anything, but yeah, that's a little snippet.
That was perfect. That was a perfect overview. I shared in the chat where you can find that listing in Spanish on the Votamos website. I highly encourage everyone to spread the Votamos website widely throughout your networks. It is completely in Spanish. It presents itself in Spanish. It does have English translations, but it's a pretty central hub of all of our voting information tailored towards our immigrants' rights platform and the community there. So please uplift it through your socials, share it with anyone you know. And if you know someone who might fit Carolyn's recruitment, please pass them along. Carolyn, I will definitely add your email into follow-up emails, but if you want to also drop it in the chat for people to reach out to you, that would be excellent. And as Carolyn said, this is a really incredible opportunity to give back to organizations that you care about too. So we will be offering $200 stipends to an organization per poll worker, which is a nice little chunk of change to get. So please share that within your networks. Let them know that poll workers can choose which organization they would like to donate to. And it's an incredible way to give back to the community and also to be part of the election process. So we're just about wrapping it up here. I wanted to give Charita or Julissa a moment too. If you had any action items that you would like our viewers to know about to get involved with the elections or in other work, that would be a great time to announce them.
Well, I want everybody to support our dear Caroline Torres that is making a gigantic work meaningful, because when you go to the polls, you want to see people that look like you. Diversity needs to be expressed there, because we are the more competent to treat you with the way you need to be treated in that moment. Even if they just say, hello, how are you? This is the place. It's lovely to have somebody speak to you in your same language. And also because we need to be more civically engaged. We need to be more part of this democracy. That's what Votamos We Vote is. Okay, 2 things. Number 1, the realization, the reality, the cultural reality that the vote of the Latinos are not just your vote. No, it's the vote of all the people that don't have a voice in this democracy. The undocumented people, that are millions. Your vote have the history, the struggle of 12 million undocumented people in this country. So when you vote, you are stronger than ever. You are making history. Remember, there was few abolitionists for millions of people enslaved. That's what you're doing, not in this time that needs you. Your vote is the voice of the voiceless, but also the voice of the people that you love, like your grandfather, your father, your mother, your grandmother, sometimes your neighbors, your cousins, your uncles and aunts. Your vote is the voice of these people that cannot have a voice. Number 2, listen. Many of you hopefully are listening and you are undocumented. Guess what? You cannot just say, well, I can't vote. That's not for me. It is for you, because it's your future. And yes, you cannot vote. We're not saying that, but you can take your cousin, your son, everyone that is ready, that is a US citizen, over 18 to vote so they can be your voice. Tell them, be my voice, because I don't have a voice in this democracy. You are my voice. So it works both ways. That's what we call ourselves. Votamos, we vote.
I don't even want to talk after Chorito, because that was probably the most inspiring way we could leave this webinar today. But thank you so much for joining tonight. I appreciate your time. I appreciate all of our panelists' time. Thank you so much for sharing your insights, your knowledge, and your experiences. Priya, thank you for doing all the behind the scenes work to keep these series going. I do just want to shout out that we have one more of these series next Wednesday on the 31st. We'll be talking about voting rights. Please join us there. That will also be offered for CE credit as well. And please, please, please check out our Votamos website and our Vote Delaware website that outline in both English and Spanish all of the changes to voting in Delaware this year, including vote by mail, same-day registration, and early voting. So with that, I will end us right at 7:30 and try to respect everybody's time here. Thank you, Chorito, Julissa, Carolyn, and Priya, and thank you for all of our viewers as well.
Thank you, beloved Julissa, Caroline, Mira, and Priya. You are a wonderful team to be in.
All right, have an excellent night, everyone.